Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I am very excited that all week long we are able to talk about the legislative session that ended last Wednesday. So I have in studio with me right now Senator Chris Holbert. He is actually the Senate Majority Leader. Welcome, Chris. How are you?
Well, a little more rested than I was this time last week. So.
I bet. Absolutely. So we were just talking off air right before we popped on here, and you were giving me an interesting background about the Senate Majority Leader versus the Senate President and how that came to be back in 1975.
Yeah, 74, 75.
Yeah.
If you visit the Capitol on the east side of the Senate chamber, you can find what we call the Hall of Presidents. And the Senate President is the highest level ranking officer of the chamber. But some of the history that you'll learn there if you visit the Hall of Presidents is that between 1876 and 1974, our lieutenant governor actually served as the president of the Senate. So it's a role similar to the vice president of the United States. He serves as the president of the U.S. Senate.
Right.
I don't think Vice President Pence is at the U.S. Senate very often, but he would go there to cast a tie-breaking vote.
Okay.
So up until 1974, the lieutenant governor served as the president of the Senate, and then in 1974, the voters of Colorado voted to change our Constitution and remove the lieutenant governor from the legislature. So starting in 1975, one of the 35 elected senators, is now elected president, and since 1975, the roles of the majority leader and the president have evolved somewhat. Yeah. So when you look at the state house, the Speaker of the House clearly has the most power of that chamber. Mm-hmm. She is the boss.
Yes.
But in the Senate, it's a shared leadership role, and it really depends on what the situation is to determine whether the president has authority or the majority leader. And I don't mean to diminish the role of Senate President Grantham. He and I have worked together for 2 years, and it's great to be in that leadership position, one of them with him. But it's just part of the history of our legislature that some people aren't aware of. But again, if you visit the Capitol and go to the east side of the Senate chamber, you can find the Hall of Presidents, and there's a plaque there that explains a lot of that.
That's exciting. I did not know that, which is why I forced you to tell me all over again on air. So yes, actually, Senate President Kevin Grantham will be joining us in the second half of the show.
Fantastic.
We separated because we thought you guys might duke it out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No.
So give us a little bit of your background. How long have you been in legislation? What sparked your interest in getting into politics and government in general?
Sure. In my career, I came out of college in 1984 and went into the automobile industry and then moved to the mortgage lending industry, but I really wasn't building or selling cars or making mortgage loans. I was on the marketing communication side and had the opportunity to learn about state and federal regulatory issues and statutory law issues in both of those industries, and really started to understand the role of government and be fascinated with it. In 1992, I became marketing director for the Colorado Mortgage Lenders Association, was with that organization through 1997, left for a while to help a friend sell a company, and then was asked to come back to lead the organization as president, or what might ordinarily be called executive director. And working again at the state and federal level and really understanding the role of government and the impact of government. In 2002, the board of directors asked me to take over government affairs, so I started spending a lot more time at the Capitol, meeting legislators, working with them directly, and decided that was something I was interested in.
Yeah.
It was a very significant decrease in pay.
Yes, always, almost.
We do hear accusations of we're just in it for the money and the power, but a friendly reminder, our state legislators are part-time citizen legislators.
Yeah.
We work for those 4 months, 120 days, and the taxpayers, we're grateful for the $30,000 base salary. That does change as of next January. I think it goes up to about 38, but this is not a get rich scenario.
Yeah, definitely not.
But I decided that I wanted to run for the House and waited for an opportunity in 2010 to run for a House district and was successful there. Went to the State House in 2011, spent 4 years there. my predecessor, a close friend, Ted Harvey, was term limited in the Senate, so I ran for the Senate in 2014 and have been in the Senate for 4 years.
Well, what do the next 4 years look like?
Well, I am on the ballot this year. Senate District 30 is up for election, so if the voters send me back for another 4 years, then I could be there until 2022. But excuse me, it's it's something that we hear a lot from voters who want term limits. They look at the federal level, and we actually have that at the state level.
Yeah.
So this is not a career opportunity,
right?
So much. The pay's pretty minimal, and
yeah.
and there are term limits. So
absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this process, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. I mentioned you off air. I'm not super political. Sure. I didn't actually learn a lot about politics, particularly Colorado politics, until I started working here at the Colorado Business Roundtable, and it's been a great institution to learn and see real government at work, right? Sure. Working on issues around Colorado, and it's fascinating. But as far as this legislative session goes, you said you've got some cool statistics here to share with us on how this looks. So wherever you want to start. One
of the common criticisms of government in general, especially the legislative branch, is that we fight like cats and dogs and nothing ever gets done. But because the way the people of Colorado have amended our Constitution over the years, the decades, and I don't have time to explain all of that, but we have a very unique Constitution that provides us a very unique legislative session and how the legislature operates. And because the past 4 years we've had a split legislature, Republicans have controlled the Senate with a 1-seat majority, and Democrats have had the House by more than that. I think looking at the past 3 or 4 years is interesting. And I like to ask people, based on most of the press, they talk about gridlock, and again, we fight like cats and dogs and we can't get along. If we have gridlock in Colorado, what percentage of bills, all of the bills that are introduced, what percentage of those bills do you think actually pass when we have a split legislature, a Republican Senate and a Democrat House? So I ask groups, and I often hear single-digit numbers, or 10% or 20%. But looking back the past 4 years, it's very different. These are the 4 years we've had a Republican Senate and a Democrat House. So starting in 2015, there were 682 bills introduced, and 54% of those actually passed both chambers.
Wow.
Then we went into the 2016 session. There were 685 bills introduced, and a total of 56% passed. Now, you might remember, your listeners might remember, there was a fairly contentious election that year. And people came away from that election either very frustrated or very excited.
Right.
And we came back in 2017, again, with a Republican Senate and a Democrat House. And there were 681 bills, and the close percentage went from 56% up to 62.
Wow.
Wow.
That's impressive. Yeah.
We had marches and rallies and protests, and there were, again, people who were very unhappy about the outcome of the November 2016 election, but for the 120 days that we were there in 2017, we had a 62% close ratio.
Huh.
And then this year, we just got the numbers. The number of bills did increase up to 721, and we had a 60% close ratio.
Wow.
So I think that surprises most people. I've asked different groups, and I had one listener guess it exactly, I think, for the 2017, the 62%, and she was a master's poli-sci student from Korea.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
Okay. But this is not to say that the 100 legislators that President Grantham or I get particular credit. We were there at the time and did contribute to that. But really the credit for that goes back to the people of Colorado who, over the decades, have amended our state constitution to change the way our legislative process works. One of the things that's unique in Colorado is it's limited to 120 days. Now, many states have a limit on how many days or how long they can meet, but it's very common in states that either the governor or the legislature or both can extend the session. And we can't do that in Colorado. So the 120th day, I like to say at midnight or before on the 120th day, our crystal carriage of lawmaking authority turns back into a pumpkin, and we are citizens just like everybody else.
Now, I'd imagine that it gives you a break, right? That's
Well, it
got to
does,
be
yeah.
quite nice to actually have to end, right? Not do an extension, have to worry about it for another 5 days or 6 days, right?
That's true. And people will say, well, ask, what happens if the governor calls a special session? In the rare occasion that happens, everything that happens in a special session is unique. Nothing can carry over from a general session to a special session.
Okay.
So if a bill was one step shy of completing the process, the governor can't call a special session and say, okay, here's an extra day or 2 or 3 to complete that. Everything in a special session has a beginning and an end that is unique to that session.
Well, that's kind of nice. I think the voters in Colorado are pretty smart.
Well, yeah, I think we've had such population growth over the years that there's so many people who are here now, who are paying attention, who are voting, who may not know that history. And I really enjoy going back in time. And I think it was 1978. I may be wrong in my year there, but the voters approved what's called the gavel amendment. Give a vote to every legislator.
Oh.
So in Colorado, we really don't have what would normally be thought of as pocket veto. The president, the speaker, neither majority leader or committee chairs cannot kill a bill on their own. So if you have a bill in Congress and in most state legislatures, once that bill is assigned out to a committee chair, that chairman, chairwoman can decide whether or not he or she wants to even hear the bill.
Right.
And if they don't want to, then the bill's dead.
Oh.
But we can't do that in Colorado. Every bill that's introduced has to be assigned to a committee, and it must be heard. So there's no pocket veto. The only way that a bill can really die in Colorado is for a simple majority or more of the members of a committee or a chamber to vote to what's called postpone indefinitely, which is legislative lingo for kill.
Yeah.
So it's very different. Gavel does require that bills go to committee. There's no pocket veto. We've had advocacy in the past where people have said, send a bill directly to the floor. That would actually violate our state constitution.
Yeah.
But you could probably do that in other legislative bodies, but you can't do that in ours.
Yeah. No, I would imagine, though, that the gavel amendment has its good and bad in there, right? Because if you get a bill that's maybe nonsensical on some terms, or for the majority of people to think it's a nonsensical bill to look at, I would imagine it takes time that could be spent.
Well, observers sometimes criticize Colorado that our legislature is more contentious than others. And that's a really obvious, at least to me, it's obvious reason why. Whether you're on the political left or right or the center, if you love a bill or can't stand a bill in another state or at the federal level, you may not have the opportunity to become frustrated or really excited about the bill because it's just never heard.
Right.
In Colorado, this year we had 721 bills, and every one of those has to be assigned out to a committee and an opportunity for the public hearing to take place.
Phew. That is a lot.
And it's different.
Yes.
It's a lot and it's different.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty of some specific bills here. I know that one that you were a part of was SB 18243, and that's the retail sales for alcohol beverages.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the story starts years ago, but the last significant hurdle was in 2016 with Senate Bill 197. Yeah. And people, even today, say, I want to be able to buy full-strength beer when I'm in the grocery store. Well, that happened in 2016, but there was a delay on implementation. And January 1st, 2019, under current law, not Senate Bill 243 this year, but under current law, all of the 3-2 retailers, whether it's a convenience store or grocery store, all of those 3-2 retailers will convert to full-strength beer. So that is already going to happen.
Yes. So
Senate Bill 243 looked at some regulatory, in my opinion, really regulatory issues that remained unanswered. One of them was that under 3-2 sales, people 18 or over can sell. But in a liquor store, to sell full-strength beer or liquor in a liquor store, you have to be 21.
Right.
So we have all of these 3-2 retailers who are about to start selling a different product, full-strength beer.
Right.
And fermented malt beverage is the technical license term. It isn't just beer.
Yeah.
But there are fermented beverages that have very high alcohol content. So the question that I wanted to answer was, I didn't want the disparity. In some businesses, you had to be 18 to sell the same product that you had to be 21 in a different store or a different business. And the Safeway or I shop in Lone Tree, there's a liquor store that has a common wall between the Safeway and the liquor store. So really on January 1st, on one side of that wall, you have to be 18, and the other side of the wall, 21. And it really bothered me that the state was telling businesses to sell the same product, two different answers. So I asked the legislature, pick one. I asked the committee that we went to, pick one. And the bill started off in the Senate at 21. As it went over to the House changed that to 18. And now anyone 18 or older will under Senate Bill 243, 18 or over will be able to sell beer in either a grocery store, a convenience store, or a liquor store. That does open the opportunity for an 18-year-old to work in a liquor store and sell wine and spirits. Liquor store owners do not have to hire 18-year-olds, or if they do, they can have supervision there. But that's one of the disparities, the double standards that I saw in law that I really wanted to have answered. Then we have the 3-2 merchants who have always been, for years and years or decades, however long they've been there, were located within 500 feet of a school.
Right.
And our laws allowed 3-2 beer to be sold within 500 feet of a school.
Okay.
But we don't allow full-strength beer, wine, or liquor to be sold within 500 feet of a school. So those merchants were either going to be shut out or grandfathered in. So the current law 197 back in 2016 effectively said they were going to transition, and all of them got to continue.
Okay.
And we wanted to just clarify that, as there were people in communities. I know we heard from people who live near East High School in Denver. There's 2 convenience stores apparently within 500 feet of the school, and they will both be eligible to sell full-strength beer. And people in the community started to ask, well, wait a minute, what if we don't want that? Current law and Senate Bill 243 will allow them to transition. It does allow the local licensing authorities, if there are public safety issues, underage sales or attempted sales or shoplifting, public drunkenness, those kind of things, the local licensing authorities will still be able to not renew a license if those things become apparent.
Right.
So we really tried to go down a long list of regulatory issues. Another one, you've been able to go into a park in Denver and play volleyball and take 3-2 beer into the park.
Right.
But you won't be able to buy 3-2 beer after January 1st. So Senate Bill 243 also allows those local licensing authorities, jurisdictions like Denver, to make the decision that works best for them. If they want to allow full-strength beer into their park, they can do that. If they want to allow wine or spirits, they can do that too. And all jurisdictions across Colorado will have that flexibility. We also realize that state parks controlled by the Parks and Wildlife Division, we don't have 3-2 beer anymore. If you're going to go to a state park, we also allowed them the authority to decide beer, wine, and spirits, and make the decision that works right for that geographic location.
Just a quick reminder for our listeners, if you do visit a park and you bring stuff with you, take it back out.
Yes.
That is one thing that we are trying to get that message across Colorado. So this is very interesting. I don't think I realized about the schools. Actually, I did know about the merchants having to switch over. But that makes a lot of sense, right? With the schools, the worry there that there will be more attempt for sales and things like that. But I would imagine that the merchants at those stores are going to pay attention to that.
Most definitely, and really, I took a lot of criticism for being a nanny status and saying 21, but I supported it at the end, the 18. Just have one standard for all of these businesses that are selling that same full-strength beer product.
Well, and it opens up the door for 18-year-olds to get a job, right? Working your way through school, things like that, or just working. It opens up the door for a lot more people, I believe.
I was surprised working on the bill to find out that that's becoming more common among the states. Take the focus off of Colorado and understand what other states are doing. And 18, we heard a lot, you can enlist in the military, you can, put your life on the line. You could lose your life in defense of the country, but you can't work in a convenience store and sell beer. So that's where we ended up, and
I think it's great.
I still hear from people saying, "I want to buy full-strength beer in the grocery store." And just wait till January 1st. This change is coming.
So another huge deal this session was transportation. Senate Bill 1, right? This one for me, I was excited to see we got that passed.
Senate Bill 1 did pass, and I don't want to take all of the opportunity away from President Grantham since he'll be in after me.
Yeah.
But we started about 9-10 months ago in the Senate to say we want $300 million a year. We want to go bond. Mm-hmm. Our caucus supported that. House Republicans supported that. A lot of people outside of the Capitol supported it. But our questions to the Democrats in the House and Senate and to Governor Hickenlooper was, we think 300 is the right number, $300 million a year, general fund revenue. We want to go bond. That would give us about $3.5 billion to go out and start to address the $9 million of need that we have in our highway system. But our questions to them were, if you think that's the wrong number, then how much for how long? Mm-hmm. Is it a long-term bonding solution? Yeah. Is it a 5-year commitment to pay cash? 10 years, 2 years, 1 year? How much and for how long? And really, at the very end of the session, we finally got their answer. The bill does allow for $495 million total funding out of the general fund. That's money the taxpayers have already paid,
right? And
we're going to use it for our roads and our bridges. 300 of that will go into the state highway fund. Then in 1920, in the 2019 election, we'll actually have our bonding question there. And when we have to get through this 18 election, when we get around to 2019, I would welcome the opportunity to come back and encourage people at that time to look positively on that bonding solution.
Yes.
Use the money the taxpayers are already paying us, go out, bond, and do a significant amount of work sooner rather than later. So that it did get done, and I really have to give credit to Senator John Cook, our Transportation Committee Chair. Senator Randy Baumgartner has worked on trans bonds bills for years, and we finally got Senate Bill 1 through. That's really significant also is just in our legislature, usually Senate Bill 1 and maybe the first numbers are political statements and have targets on them, especially with a split legislature. So I want to thank Governor Hickenlooper and his team, Speaker Duran, Majority Leader Becker, Leader Neville, the Republican leader in the House. We actually kept that bill alive for 120 days and got it done. So it wasn't where we started, but we didn't say we didn't draw a line in the sand and say it has to be our way. We asked the questions, and they finally came with an answer. Yeah.
This one last bill, I got to get this in the last few minutes. Para 200. Comments on that? Senate
Bill 200. It's fascinating that there are some conservative critics who are saying that it just kicked the can down the road and didn't do enough. But I want to share insight. There were representatives, lobbyists of the different union interests who were furious over Senate Bill 200.
Yes,
we have a split legislature, and what the bill accomplished, I think, deserves credit. We should be thankful for being able to move the ball some. One example is the retirement age. I think the current age right now for current enrollees is 58. Our proposal out of the Senate was to move that to 65. And I think most people out in the private sector would say, 65 makes sense.
Yeah.
The House said 60. We ended up at 64.
Decent compromise.
Yeah. We do. There's one thing that I've asked reporters to be careful about. We are investing $225 million out of the general fund, and that has sometimes been described as taxpayer funded. That isn't a tax increase. We're allocating differently. So in the legislature, we are taking a piece of that. We have moved the highest average salary. It's a 3-year rolling right now, and that's moved up to 5 years. We give state and local opportunity to opt into the defined benefit defined contribution rather than defined benefit. So there are some wins in Senate Bill 200.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll
You're
be
welcome.
right back with Senate President Kevin Grantham. I enjoyed having you here. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.